But we have many guests, many distinguished guests from India, and just want to welcome them on behalf of Haas and Garwood Center for Corporate Innovation. And they will all be speaking to us. I'm very excited to hear what they have to say. This is the only program on the West Coast where a university is hosting the corporate executives from India as well as from the Silicon Valley, from the US, to engage with one another. We have many schools on the East Coast doing this, but on the West Coast, we are the first, and we started this 3 years ago, and every year after year, the results that are happening are very fruitful because things begin here, don't end here. So things start here. And we're proud, Berkeley is proud to engage in this particular conference, US-India conference, because Silicon Valley, every other person we meet there is an Indian. And I said, why can't we use this wonderful ecosystem of corporate executives to empower India in a unique way that we can expand and the markets in India, and we need to leverage this. And UC Berkeley saw the value in doing this, while Stanford didn't. I have nothing against Stanford. But we hope that they also join us in the spirit of open innovation. But without any further ado, we have a great program for you, and I think you'll enjoy. And we'll have some breakouts, some breaks, so we can engage with our guests from India, and also others from the Silicon Valley who are here today. So without any further ado, I want to welcome our Chancellor, Carol Christ of UC Berkeley.
Distinguished guests from India who have traveled so far, corporate executives and faculty, welcome to UC Berkeley US-India Conference, sponsored by the All India Management Association. I'm inspired by the conference theme, A Transforming India, Tapping Growth Opportunities. We've been privileged to host this event for the past 3 years, and with increasing participation by the Silicon Valley community, along with our distinguished faculty, to explore market expansion in India. As an innovation hub of knowledge creation here in the East Bay and in Silicon Valley, UC Berkeley is very engaged with global communities to address diverse social and economic problems. Formulating technological and business solutions and advancing this knowledge to solve global problems has been the mission of our university since its founding. As the demand for well-educated talent and innovative research escalates, India, as the fastest growing large economy in the world, offers a unique opportunity for us to partner in this effort. This is the perfect time to strengthen relations through mentorship programs, new partnerships, and educational collaboration by involving students and faculty on relevant research projects supported by the Indian government and by prominent educational institutions in the subcontinent. This should help strengthen bilateral relations between our university and India in the years to come. I'm happy about our Smart Village research being conducted at Garwood Center by Professors Henry Chesbrough and Solomon Darwin, creating sustainable and scalable business models for village ecosystems where 70% of India's population resides is a great idea. This could bring tangible benefits to the neglected, marginalized majority of the world's population who lack access to global markets. Through events like the US-India Conference, we provide an opportunity for those in our Bay Area, Silicon Valley ecosystem to learn about India's growth and development and the vast potential for participating in and supporting the country's future. Beyond that, the educational and research endeavors of our universities are inherently oriented towards both the present and the future, and the experiences in India will be invaluable in other parts of the developing world. Every year, we send into the workforce well-educated students equipped with the tools necessary to facilitate innovation. At the same time, the basic and applied research conducted in academic laboratories is building the foundation for continued innovation in the future. We're proud to be part of this movement. I wish AIMA and the Haas School of Business success in many joint projects and programs in the future. And I'll end with what we always say at Berkeley, go Bears. Thank you.
Thank you for those inspiring words, Chancellor Crest. So glad that you support our program here. I would like to introduce another great woman here that I began to admire, who is behind this whole thing, and she's the Director General of AIMA, and she runs a very tight shop, and she manages me very well here. And Rekha, would you come and do your remarks, please?
Dignitaries on the dais, ladies and gentlemen, it's wonderful to be back at Haas School again. Such a beautiful campus and such beautiful people. Delighted to be here for the third time in a row. Thank you also, all of you for joining us today. I'm sure you've battled a lot of traffic to get here. Ambassador Venkatesan Ashok, it is a privilege to have you with us. You've been a friend and guide to AIMA now for many years. And thank you very much for your support for this conference and for joining us today and addressing us. Chancellor Crest, many thanks for your warm welcome. Thank you so much for your presence and time. I know you have a very tight schedule today and you need to leave a little early. We deeply value your participation and support to this conference and look forward to deepening this relationship going forward. As I said, we love coming here to your beautiful campus. Professor Catherine Wolfram, a real pleasure to meet you for the first time today, but hopefully we'll have many more meetings going forward. We would be delighted to work more closely with you and Haas and look forward to our interaction later today. Mr. Munjal, Mohan, my grateful thanks to you for leading the AIMA delegation and making this visit possible, especially given your own hectic schedules. Mr. Rajeev Gowda, a real delight to have you with us as a key speaker today. Thank you so much for reaching out to us and for joining us. We really value your presence today. Solomon, our special friend in Berkeley, thank you for your support, involvement, and wisdom. None of this would have been possible without your active participation. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our third edition of the US-India Conference, and each year it gets bigger and better. Over the past 3 years, we have had the privilege of having many important leaders at this conference and have had very purposeful dialogues about furthering economic and strategic cooperation between our two countries. In this edition of the conference, we aim to deepen the discussions and explore how the US can be a stakeholder in India's transformation. India is a huge market, from industrial products to consumer items, and from defense equipment to digital goods. US is the world leader in developing new technologies, and India offers tremendous scope for application of such technologies. Most of us in India share the government's perspective that India will have a $1 trillion digital economy within the next 5 years, which is more than double the size as of now. India is relying on connectivity, digital tools, and technical skills to scale up and speed up the transformation of the economy. Even the less fancied sectors such as agriculture, healthcare, education, skills, etc., offer huge opportunities for technological intervention and growth. These sectors, which have had low investment and productivity so far, can be transformed by applying sensors, Internet of Things, machine learning, and robotics. According to McKinsey, online education and training can add up to $90 billion a year to India's economy by upgrading the knowledge and productivity of the workforce. India's agriculture can use extensive application of big data, sensors, satellites, digital markets to become more productive and less wasteful. In fact, technology is the best bet to doubling farmer income in the next few years. Farmers make up nearly half the workforce of India, and if their output and income can increase, it'll prove a multiplier for India's economic growth. In a world of developing trade wars, India's open manufacturing sector is a big opportunity. The Make in India program is a fantastic opportunity for foreign companies to get a piece of India's economic growth. which is the highest in the world today. Despite the temptation to join the protectionist crowd, the dominant thinking in India favors more globalization, not less. Niti Aayog, which is the government of India's apex policy think tank, is categorical in its advice to the government that it must avoid the trap of import substitution strategy. It favors orienting India's Make in India program towards exports by making Indian firms compete against the world's best at home. There are many areas where India and the US can cooperate for mutual gain. Moreover, a strong relationship between the US and India is good for Asia and the world. We are looking forward to a great exchange of perspectives and ideas at the conference today, and I'm sure everyone will enjoy these discussions. We are fortunate to have prominent thought leaders from both the countries with us today, and I'm grateful to our speakers for joining us at the conference. I'm as privileged to have an excellent partner in the Haas School of Business, UC Berkeley, and this conference is an outcome of our joint efforts. AIMA is also grateful to the Consulate General of India, San Francisco, Garwood Center for Corporate Innovation, Institute for South Asia Studies, they have been wonderful, US-India Business Council, and Thai Silicon Valley for their support in organizing this conference. I take this opportunity to also thank our sponsors, Kirloskar Brothers Limited, our knowledge partners, KPMG in India, and our lunch co-host, Trivium Corporate Solutions, for making it possible for us to organize the conference on this large scale. With these words, I look forward to a great day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Rekha, for those kind words to all of us here. This would not be possible if the Haas School of Business didn't embrace this idea of US-India conference 3 years ago. And one of the most enthusiastic faculty supporters is Catherine Wolfram. She's going to come and say a few words to us. Before that, I would also like to thank Institute of South Asia Studies. Dr. Muniz Faruqi is here. Would you come and join us on the dais, please? Because they played a very important role in hosting and the event management of this with Punita and Sanchita and all that. And so we just want to acknowledge you. And he's the India chair, so we can't have the India chair sitting there in the audience. So. So thank you so much for joining us. Catherine Wolfram, a very prominent Haas faculty, and she's the acting associate dean of academic affairs. She and I had the privilege of going to India and meeting the president of India, Pranab Mukherjee, to give him the Berkeley Award for Innovation. And Catherine works in the energy sector and with the Indian government and many other startups there. And we are so happy that she joined us today because our dean, Laura Tyson, acting dean, is not here. She's out of town. And so Catherine graciously agreed to come and welcome us on behalf of the Haas School of Business. Catherine?
Thanks, Solomon. So as Solomon said, I'm a professor at the Haas School and right now the acting associate dean for academic affairs. Dean Laura Tyson couldn't be here today, so she asked me to welcome you. And it's really an honor to have such an illustrious group here. Thank you to Solomon for organizing this, and thank you all for coming. I wanted to do two quick things. One is to update you on a couple developments at the Haas School, and second, give some thoughts on business education and our interactions with industry and how those might play out during the day and hopefully beyond. So in terms of the school, we're at a leadership transition, so it's really exciting for us. We've just said goodbye this past summer to Dean Richard Lyons. He was our dean for 11 years and very well respected. It was just announced several weeks ago that in January we'll welcome a new dean, our dean-to-be, dean designate, I guess, Ann Harrison. She's a noted international trade economist, currently a professor at the Wharton School. She was also a vice president at the World Bank. And most importantly, she got her undergraduate degree at Berkeley. So we're excited to welcome her back to campus. So we've got change at the top, but there are also some new developments in terms of programs and faculty. This year marks the second year of a really exciting undergraduate program that we've got. It's the Management and Entrepreneurship and Technology program, joint with the College of Engineering. Students come in as freshmen, they're admitted to the program as freshmen, and they earn degrees in both management and engineering. It's extremely popular and extremely selective. I think it's more selective than most, maybe even all Ivy League colleges. We had the first year 2,500 applicants for 30 slots, so like below 2% acceptance rate. So that's one exciting new development. We've also welcomed 3 new faculty. The new faculty are always on the cutting edge of the research frontier, so it's always exciting to see what they're working on. This year we have experts in machine learning and marketing and finance. So one measure of success in my job is not just who we get as new faculty, but who we retain. And so recently we've won some head-to-head competitions. Faculty on our staff have had offers from MIT, from Stanford, and Yale, and we've retained them, so that's always exciting for us. So in terms of business education in relationship to industry, I was on the search committee for the new dean, and so we heard from a lot of candidates and got a lot of perspectives on business education. And it led me to think hard about kind of business education and in particular the relationship to industry. And I think there have really been some interesting developments along those lines. So of course, business education has always been closely tied with industry. We've been educating future leaders in industry. But I think there's some new developments and kind of new ways in which the overlap between industry and business schools is working. So let me give you a couple examples. Haas has several relatively new part-time MBA programs for working professionals. We have an evening program, we have a weekend program, we have an executive MBA program. With the executive MBA program, all students in all those programs are working full-time. So for instance, with the executive MBA program, they work for 20 days out of 3 weeks and then come to Haas for 3 intensive days once every 3 weeks. They have 9 hours of class each day. I've taught in that program, and I thought people would just be kind of brain dead after that many hours of class, but they're extremely dedicated. And one of the most fulfilling experiences for me is that they're taking the lessons from class tomorrow, like directly back to their work lives. And a student of mine this past June said, I was able to apply one of the lessons from your class, and they were so, my company was so happy about the lesson that they decided to pay for her MBA. So, you know, just immediate translation of what you're teaching in the classroom to industry. Faculty research also involves new types of interactions between, with industry. So companies are providing extremely rich data, part of the big data machine learning revolution. Also, companies are letting academics come in and run experiments in the companies. For example, we have a professor, Samir Srivastava, who's an organizational behavior scholar. He's worked with a medium-sized Silicon Valley company. I'm not being vague about it. I don't know who it is. Samir has used sophisticated, so this company gave Samir access to all of the corporate emails, every email that was sent on their .com. And Samir used sophisticated language processing tools to identify cultural fit, like to figure out who was using language in similar ways to senior managers at the company, something really, really innovative. That's just one example. As Solomon mentioned, several faculty are working in India. I've been working for several years with a clean technology company. It was founded by a Berkeley grad, now based in Jaipur. He started as the company Grand Power started as a solar microgrid provider, but evolved into a smart meter provider. So selling not just to off-grid solutions, but selling to grid-connected customers as well. So it's really interesting for me to get access to the data that these smart meters are collecting. So here at Haas, we have the Center for Emerging Markets that's founded by our professor Ganesh Iyer. He's working to provide a platform for these types of interactions between faculty research and companies. So I'd be happy to talk to you at the break about some of these opportunities, some of give you more examples of the type of research. But again, welcome, and I look forward to a really exciting day today. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. The first three speakers were all women. Now it's time for men to come. I am a strong believer in women leadership. The next speaker needs no introduction, Mohandas Pai, a great man. He's the president of AIMA right now, and also he's the chairman of Manipal Global Education Services. It's a huge organization that has actual real impact on people and institutions. And more importantly, I have known him when he was with Infosys. He was their chief financial officer and director of HR, and he's served in many positions there. It's great fun to be with him. He's very innovative, he's always thinking, and it's my honor to have him here. Sir, please come and address.
Dignitaries on the dais, ladies and gentlemen, first let me thank Berkeley and the Haas School of Business, Solomon and his colleagues for inviting us here. The third time we are here, and it's good to be here. The United States is a leader in the world. When you come to Silicon Valley, you get, totally charged. You see the innovation that's happening here, and we all expect the United States to lead the world, even in these present circumstances when the world is undergoing very, very rapid change. So it's good to be here. Let me talk about India and explain what India is. India is a very complex animal. In 1820, India, China made up 45% of world GDP. From the start of civilization till that point, till about 1820, it was the leading economy, because economies were based upon animal power and muscle power, human beings. We had a lot of people in the country. It's an artisan-driven economy. Then we had the misfortune to have Great Britain invaders and colonizers, because in the Battle of Yorktown, Washington defeated the British, and then we had Cornwallis come to India to become the Governor General and take over the country to extract revenge for you people throwing him out. So India missed the Industrial Revolution, but participated in the West in the two great wars. In the first Great War, we had 1.5 million soldiers. Second Great War, we had 2.5 million soldiers. At the end of the Second World War, Great Britain owed India 1.6 billion pounds in that money, much less than what it owed the United States for the Lend-Lease program, which helped them win the war. After independence, we have come a long way. At the time of independence, our economy was totally poor. And if you look at the book called The Case for India by Will Durant, he writes that between 1850 to 1930, the British took away $400 billion of money in 1930 terms to build their empire and their country. So we are a poor country, and we participated in developing the economy to adopting socialistic policies because our leadership were educated in Cambridge. They were enthusiastic about the Fabian School of Economics, and we were a closed economy. In 1991, we opened up. From 1991 till 2018, India grew our economy from $275 billion to $2.6 trillion, a growth rate of 8.75% a year for 28 years. The only country that's grown faster is China, which grew from 1978 till about 2015 at 9.5%. And the difference between India and China, in my view, is one, that when Mao took power in 1949, he made a famous remark, women hold up half of heaven. He educated China's women. So women participation in China in the workforce is 65%. In India, it's 25% for various reasons, but we didn't educate our women. Now our women are getting educated, and you're going to see a resurge in their participation in the workforce, and that's going to change India in a very dramatic manner. Let me give some data about India. Second largest manufacturer of steel, 120 million tons. Second largest manufacturer of cement, 325 million tons. And India is the largest seller of two-wheelers because of Sunil, 25 million two-wheelers today. The fifth largest seller of four-wheelers, 3.8 million vehicles. The second largest manufacturer of trucks. And if you look at power, 342,000 megawatts of power, the fifth largest in the world. Mobile phones, 1.2 billion. It's a very large country. Agriculture, 277 million tons of food grains are grown every year. We have stocks of 60 million tons, second largest in the world. In horticulture, 305 million tons, second largest in the world. In cotton, 36 million bales, the largest in the world. Milk, 169 million tons, the largest in the world. And in terms of pulses, the largest consumer of pulses, we get about 118 million pulses per year. And we have a sugar production of 36 million tons. There's a glut. This year will be the largest in the world. And in terms of bovine population, we have 522 million bovines in the country, and many of them are walking in the street as free citizens of the country. It's a very large, complex economy. So our PPP GDP is $10.3 trillion. $10.3 trillion in PPP. The PPP multiple is 4 times. So the currency value is lesser because of the fact that it's an underpriced economy, so you don't see the size. What about the future? We believe that between now and 2030, India will be a $10 trillion economy. We're going to grow at about 8.5% to 9% a year. We've grown for the last 28 years, and we will grow. But we'll grow in a very sustainable manner. Energy consumption per percentage growth in GDP is going to be lesser. We're not going to follow the American model of excess consumption, excess energy, because if you do, the planet will be in a very, very bad shape. We don't want the bay to rise and the waters to rise. We love California too much to cause discomfort to you. And how is this growth going to come about? First of all, if you look at the composition of GDP, 70% of India is driven by consumption, 30% by investment. China is, I think, 55% consumption balanced by investment. We have 28% savings to GDP, 30% investment to GDP. So we have enough resources to grow at 8.5, 8.7%. What we lack is productivity and inefficiency, because there are 2 things that make an economy competitive: productivity of capital and productivity of labor. In terms of productive capital, the Sensex 30 stocks earn about 17-18%, which is pretty good, about the cost of capital. And in terms of labor productivity, we're quite poor. Our logistic cost is about 14% of GDP. I think the United States is 5, China is 6. So it's a very inefficient economy, but we have transformed the economy now because we are using digital technologies in a massive way. India has 1.2 million mobile phones, 900 unique numbers for people. We buy about 125, 150 smartphones per year. We manufacture $40 billion of phones a year, largely assembly with imports from China. But we are seeing the use of big data by everybody. India consumes 10 gigabytes of data per month, driven by a large company which pushed up subscribers to about 250 million in about 8 quarters. And we get unlimited data for $1.50 a month. Unlimited data to be used in the mobile. And now we are seeing the impact of this. India has 1.2 billion bank accounts. The government opened 350 million bank accounts in the last 3 to 4 years. And India has 1.2 billion people who have a unique identity in a portal called Aadhaar, which Rajeev has been a great supporter of in Parliament. I mean, it started about 10 years ago, and now we're seeing the benefits of this, because 1.2 billion people have a unique identity. People outside don't understand the impact, because we had 600 million people who didn't have an identity. They couldn't open a bank account because they had no address. So we have an identity where use the iris and thumbprint is in the database, very secure, despite what somebody in the UK talks about all the time. And people are using it to make transactions. So today I can transfer money from one part of India to another part of India in 30 seconds for no cost. In the banking system. You can do it nowhere in the world. Maybe WeChat can do it, Alipay can do it, but we do it through the formal system, not outside the formal system. And last month we had 300 million transactions. It took 20 years for card companies to develop 250 million transactions a month, and this app developed 300 million transactions. So people are taking the digital economy in a very big way, and this is going to drive the future. In terms of innovation, India has one of the largest software service companies in the world. We export $122 billion of software exports, 60% to the United States. We have made American companies very competitive. And if you want to understand the impact, you've got to look at European companies. When they do digital transactions, they're way behind. And you must go to Japan to see what legacy does to you if you don't open up. Of the top 10 software service companies in the world, 5 are Indian. Of the top 5, 3 are Indian. Of the 2 million employees in the top 10, 1.5 million are Indians. 60% of global outsourcing in IT comes to India. And India has 4.25 million people employed in the IT industry, out of which 2 million work for American companies. America has 6 million people in software, 1 million are Indians. If you add these 2 million working, that is 3 million out of 8 million. And Bangalore has 1.6 million people in IT. The Silicon Valley has 1.8. By 2020, Bangalore will have 2 million people. Now, you don't see the value of this because they're priced very differently. FTE costs in America $150,000. In India, it's $55,000. But the work they do is almost similar. So India and US are joined together. This is the base of the service industry built up because of the higher education system. We have 900 universities, 51,000 colleges, 3.4 million people, 34.5 million people in college. We graduate about 8 million people every year. And we graduate about 800,000 engineers, 200,000 are very, very good. We have 170,000 students studying in American universities, 60% doing graduate studies. And many of them are going back to build India. Many of them stayed here in the earlier generation. Now they go back, not because they're not getting visas and all that. They're going back because the opportunities in India are very, very good. We have a startup ecosystem, which is very large, 40,000 startups. Last year, we got $13.75 billion of capital coming in. These people have created $100 billion of value. We have 20 unicorns, 64 billionaires, 20 unicorns. In the next 3 to 5 years, we'll create another 20 unicorns. We probably will have the third largest number of unicorns in the world. And we believe by 2025, India will have 100,000 startups in technology and create $500 billion of value. And they'll employ 3.5 million people. So digital economy is taking off, and that is transforming India in a very, very significant way. So you have the traditional industry, you have agriculture, which is coming up in a dramatic manner. You have a GST, the goods and service tax, which has made India into one single market. You'll be very surprised, till last year, India was not one single market. You understand interstate commerce in the United States. You know the laws that apply to interstate commerce. When you go from state to state, and we had 29 states, we had checkposts where they physically used to check, and there was corruption. Now suddenly, we have one single market, and you can go from Delhi to Bangalore in 2 days, as against maybe 3 days, and that has brought down logistic costs by 25%. And these are remarkable things that are happening all over. Today, a woman is sitting down in a remote village in the Thar Desert in Rajasthan. If she wakes up in the morning and finds a child to be ill, she'll go to a mobile phone powered by big data, and with connectivity, do a FaceTime with the Prime Minister and tell him a child is ill, and a helicopter will come and pick up the child. Can you beat that? So this is what is happening in India, and this is the place to be. And the biggest growth in the world in GDP terms is going to happen in India. And by 2020, the world will be a transformed place, because in 2020, global GDP in the OECD will be lesser than the emerging markets for the first time in 200 years. And by 2030, the GDP in the emerging markets will be 1.5 times what happens in the OECD. So China and India have to have sustainable paths to growth. If China and India consume energy the way it was done in the developed countries, we're all going to be in trouble. And I want to end by just talking about the social sector. Power in India has come to the bottom 40% of society. 50% of the panchayats, or the village councils, are women by law. And we're trying to move a law, Rajeev and others are trying to have 33% women in parliament. Because that's one great thing that we have to do. India has 1,600 tongues. It's the cradle of human civilization. There are many people coming up, trying to grow and trying to educate their children. In India, a mother will eat one meal less, but she'll send her child to school. And all girls want to go to school. We have 270 million children in school. Out of 100 kids who come to class 1, about 75 finish class 10. It's an enormous change that's happening. An enormous change in a significant way, which will change global dynamics in a very positive manner. It is the largest democracy, 450 media channels, very cacophonous, very different voices. We have multiple political parties, multiple things happening in India, 1,000 mutinies all over the place, 1,000 changes, and everybody doing their own thing. It's the most complex, most diverse country in the world. So when you try to understand India, please don't try. When we don't understand India, please experience India. It's a country to be experienced, to be seen. No explanation needed. Come, see it what it is, enjoy it for what it is, because there's no place on the planet where an experiment of people living together, 1.3 billion people of such diversity, has ever happened together. We have people living in the forest, who are possibly 200 years behind the time. We have people living in the cities like Sunil Munjal, who's a global citizen who knows more about global economy than any of us possibly do. And we have all sorts of people doing all sorts of experiments all over. So I want to end by saying, it's good to be here. I request you to look at India very differently. India is what India is. Anybody from India can come with a social theory to India and find the data to meet the theory. So you can have any theory about humans, come to India, you'll find the data. Because you don't find it in China. It's a very homogeneous society. We are a heterogeneous society. So everything goes. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Mohan, for those inspiring words. It makes me feel proud to be an Indian today. I don't feel that way most of the time, but you put me up there. So we all are. So thank you for those positive words and inspiring words. The next speaker is an awesome person. I learn every time I sit around the table with him. He knows the world economy. He knows so much. He's very well-read, besides being the chairman of the largest two-wheeler company in the world. Until recently, I thought China was the manufacturer of the two-wheelers in the world, but India exceeded that. And he's a conference chair, and he serves on many, many boards, and his biggest challenge is, which board I need to get off, because he likes to serve people, and he's a global citizen. It's great to have him here today, Sunil Munjal.
Thank you, Solomon. This is a special occasion for us. So I'd like to thank all of you on the dais and all in the audience. First, I should tell you that between Rekha and Mohan, they stole all the lines that I had in this note. So I quickly tried to write some stuff down to tell you about what's actually going on. The entire world seems to recognize that something's going on in India, but no one quite knows what is going on. And that's both scary and it's interesting. Because we are a country, quite as Mohan said, it takes a lifetime, and you just might begin to understand what's going on in India. And it's not true just for people like yourselves who visit India, it's equally true for all of us who live in India. We are genuinely the most diverse nation in the world, for many of the things that Mohan said and many more. I don't know of any other country which has more than 4 official languages. India has 18 official languages. We have 5,000 dialects spoken across the country. Every 27 miles, the culture changes. It is an absolutely fascinating, it's not just a country, it's actually a civilization. And very often, even we don't realize why we behave in the way we do. We used to talk about our 8 to 10,000 year known history of India. Recently, I'm told there was a discovery where they are able to carbon date some of that to 32,000 years. And I'm told there is one current one which they have just started to work on, which appears it is even older. And it's like a mini city which appears to have roads, drainage, places for people to live and to gather. So clearly there's more here than we understand. And our relationship with the US has been an amazingly complex relationship. We've had this love-hate relationship going on since the early days of independent India. The leadership at that point in time, I'm told, tried to build a relationship with the US, it didn't work, and then started to veer towards Russia, because it was a bipolar world in those days. And obviously, many people also turned bipolar with the kind of world we had. And India chose a very strange model for itself. We called ourselves a socialist democracy. So it's an oxymoron by itself. So it's an interesting model to follow for a country where value and wealth got evacuated over a long period of time, over a few centuries. The belief in the government then was that it is only the large government-owned enterprises that can be set up to build infrastructure, to build steel plants and the like, or power plants. And the private sector should only get involved in small and mid-sized enterprise because they do not have any accumulated wealth with them. Probably a good idea at that point in time, but the mistake we made was not following closely how rapidly this was changing and changing the regulation in time. Which is why, when we did change in the early 90s, we had run late already. So we had created a bunch of problems. Because if you remember, they used to say, by the way, the British left some wonderful stuff behind. They left a rail network and they left bureaucracy. And we turned that into a fine art ourselves. Nobody helped us there. And that bureaucracy had actually held India back. And so in 91, when we opened up, the biggest change that took place was we said, please use your own individual enterprise. Indians by nature are enterprising. And you'll see that around the world. You see that here. We talked of California as the home of the new digital world. I believe a large number of the successful startups are owned, run, or managed by Indians. And I'm not saying they have a monopoly on this, but clearly there's something they're doing which is working. So we inherited a set of problems, first from the British time, and then some we created ourselves. So if you think back about 20 years, what did people say about India? That this is a place that's very difficult to work in. Lack of physical infrastructure, too much corruption, and too much red tape. Now, if you turn this on its head, these are some of our biggest and the best opportunities available right now. To us as Indians, and to the world to come in and work in India, or work with us, or work by themselves. Because increasingly, it has opened up its economy. We are, incidentally, one of the most open economies in the world today. It's not often recognized. We are a 42% external economy. Just for your sense of balance, to understand, the US is a 21% open economy, external economy. So even we don't realize what we've done over the last few decades and how quickly and rapidly this has changed. It's in a sense like you plant a bamboo, you put a bamboo seed, and nothing seems to happen for 5 years. Then suddenly up it pops, and in a few weeks it grows 60, 50, or sometimes even higher than that. And that's what appears to be happening. So all of the wonderful things that Mohan was talking about are not all visible yet, by the way. It is the transformation which makes this an interesting place right now. In a complex place where languages, cultures, cuisines, dress code, all of them across the country are such that I could be in foreign land because I live in Delhi and in Punjab. So if I go down to the southern parts of India, the people there look different. They speak a different language. The only common language I might have with them is English. So our complexity is absolutely amazing. And that is where the real opportunity lies, building new infrastructure. India has taken up the world's largest ever road building program. The other interesting thing, and I'll come back to this in a minute, the other interesting thing is, since we started to open up in 91, there's a minor correction, Mohan. The actual work didn't start in 91, it started a little bit earlier, actually. And Rajiv Gandhi was Prime Minister. He made 3 very interesting comments. He's saying, we have so many young people. Why do we not use this energy? The world is switching over to technology. What's wrong with us? And we are isolating ourselves when the entire world seems to be converging together. three very profound observations. And I believe the benefit that we are getting now is of moving forward and making the three big changes. The demographics that we talk about are absolutely amazing. 54% of India is below the age of 30. The other interesting one is 72% of India used to live in the rural areas. That's now down to 68%. Both scary and exciting, because the people living in the rural areas are now moving to the cities. So urbanization is an enormous new phenomena. So a great opportunity to build new cities, to upgrade existing ones, to build urban agglomerations, to build suburban areas. Besides just the road building program, we've also undertaken one of the most ambitious infrastructure projects ever conceived in the world. It's called the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor. It sounds like a simple statement, but it is like building a new country. The idea is to build a high-speed rail track and develop 100 miles either side of that. And this is brand new developments, which also has new cities. And each of these is being developed not just as a smart city, but as the very idea of focusing on clusters. So one is focused on education, one on manufacturing, one on the service industry, and one on health. So it is trying to bring the best of the world into these places. The second big challenge used to be corruption and excessive red tape. A lot of the corruption came from excessive red tape. So one of the initiatives that has been ongoing now for the last 3 governments is to bring down complexity of regulations and rules. Over 1,000 laws have been scrapped in recent times, in just the last 2 years. Over 1,000 laws which are completely irrelevant right now have been scrapped. And there's a list of many, many more which are going. We haven't quite got there, by the way. I should add, I don't want any of you to get the incorrect impression that the work we have to do is over and done. There's a lot of work to be done. But what's encouraging is that the direction is right. The pace is quite encouraging because it is moving at a rapid pace right now. I could give you more statistics, but I think we got enough from Mohan for the day today. So I shall stay away from statistics for a while. But it is genuinely a fascinating time. It is truly amazing to be alive and around at this time in India. For a long time, we used to talk about India's greatness in its long-distant past. It used to be called the golden peacock of the world, or in its potential in the future. That potential is being tapped here and now. Since '91, when the reform program started, we have had every party in government, extreme left, extreme right, and every color in between. And the wonderful thing is that our broad direction of the economic reform, of the structural reform, of the administrative reform has not changed. Of course, each time a new government comes in, there is an accent and some things become a little bit faster, some will become a little bit slower, but the broad direction has not changed. So there is agreement, while there is extreme politics, by the way, like any good democracy, and we are a very noisy democracy. We are truly the world's most thriving democracy, and I can genuinely say so, because every Indian has an opinion, by the way, on everything. And many have more than one opinion, incidentally. And no Indian is shy of ever airing his or her opinion. And Mohan touched on another interesting thing, is women. And I like that the order, Solomon, that you had all of the leaders up front and all of us guys following them, because I think that's what we need. That is the smarter half of our population. Truly, genuinely, the much smarter half of our population. And we've not given it enough room. So the changes taking place in encouraging women to play their real roles, to tap into that potential, is creating an amazing amount of energy in our system. So I think as these complex changes are taking place, it is creating opportunities and it's also creating new challenges, because the acceptance of all of us of the new order is one thing which needs to change as well. It's not an easy change to accept. For people who are in there, in the middle of this, some things are exciting because they're pushing for it, and some scare them. Yesterday, or day before yesterday, a law which said homosexuality is a criminal act got scrapped in India. And there was celebration all over India. But there were also protests. There are people saying, what's this going on? We are a conservative society. Families are important. This is not okay. But clearly, there are more people cheering than not. So what we are saying is, Indians need to be responsible for themselves, but demonstrate their capability, their enterprise, by building bridges within the country and building bridges across the world. So this is a wonderful opportunity for us to actually work with the US in tapping into this new dramatic change that is taking place in industry, in investments, in social sciences. It's also an experiment taking place. We have 600,000 villages across India, and there is now a self-governance mechanism established at that level. And that is the one Mohan said has 40% women. We have the highest number of elected women representatives in the world in India. But our job is not over. I just want the reason I keep repeating this is because each time we look at one of the problems, it also offers to us an amazing new solution, an amazing set of opportunities. So when we go around here and look at NASA and Gilead Sciences and Verily and Autodesk, we had a wonderful visit here. For 3 days, we visited some of the most innovative companies in this part of the world. And they are the most innovative companies in the world. And it just opened up your eyes. It opens up your mind to the possibilities. And I think that's all we need to show the Indian right now. Just where the possibilities are and genuinely allow and let them free and let them tap into their resource of energy. And we do make good friends because our entire social structure is based on relationships and friendships. We build relationships and we retain them over a period of time. And I think that offers a great opportunity. Many of us in this room who come from India, many of you from India who are living here, have already demonstrated that. We worked in partnerships with companies from around the world. We built for each one of them great value, great wealth out of these partnerships. So I do think that what you do for us, Solomon, and your colleagues is absolutely invaluable. Thank you very much to you, to the faculty and colleagues and friends at UC Berkeley. And I do think this is a partnership which needs to grow. We must not leave this as a one-off, once-a-year meeting. So I'm glad you're meeting with Rekha and some of your colleagues are discussing tighter partnerships of things that we can do through the year. Because I do think this is a time for this partnership to stand out now and build for both of us and for the world a set of unique opportunities of which each one of us has a chance to take advantage of. And collectively, I do think there's special work to be done. Thank you very much, and all the very best.
Thank you, Sunil. There's a lot of wisdom in those words. Really appreciate your time here with us. Ambassador Ashok has some thought-provoking slides to show and a presentation. And if I may ask all the guests if you can come and sit down in the front seats here that are reserved and maybe put in some extra chairs there, that'll be great. Ambassador Ashok is an ambassador of the people. He has been an ambassador to many emerging countries, and we are fortunate to have him here as the Consul General of India in San Francisco. He is a real global citizen and has a heart for the people, the underserved markets. And I have had him in my classroom many a time, both in classes that I taught for smart cities classes as well as smart village classes. And so he's here to share with us some thoughts. And Ambassador, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much, Solomon. It's been a great journey. It's almost 4 years that I've been here in San Francisco area, and it's been a great, it's been wonderful working with Solomon and on smart villages itself. And I think there are some tremendous lessons to be learned in the process that he is doing in terms of opening up villages and identifying possibilities, learning the pain points of people. But I would like to begin today by thanking UC Berkeley, Haas School of Business, and AIMA for organizing the US-India conference for the third time in a row. And I'm also very happy to say that this is the third time I'm participating in this conference. I also thank the galaxy of luminaries who are present here today. No, I think we'll have to go back. In a recent article in the New York Times, the journalist and author Thomas L. Friedman said the real foundation of sustainable wealth is education, trade, infrastructure, human capital, and in the most successful places, rule of law. Much of Asia has grown not by discovering natural resources, but by tapping its human resources, the men and women who live there, and giving them the tools to realize their potential. Do we see it here? We don't see it here. Okay. We are in a great job of transforming India. We are trying to bring change to 68% of India, which lives in our villages. And in the process, we are trying to tap the growth opportunities that exist for our citizens. The growing middle class is something which international companies are targeting in a very big way. And already 3.3 billion global middle class will be increasing to 5.6 billion by 2030. In the middle class in wealthier nations is in retreat, struggling with a financial crisis, searching for value, losing interest in brands. While the middle class in emerging countries has a young, confident population with rising incomes, rising expectations, aspirations, and they want high-quality products and are prepared to spend on them. But 87% of the next billion people who will enter the middle class will be from India and China. And the demand for things like smartphones, white goods, tourism, leisure will all go up exponentially. Economic growth, urbanization, migration to cities, all these spur consumption. As you see from these two tables here, even though the GDP of the wealthier nations or OECD group is about 40 trillion, the low rate of growth means that the potential new value accruing every year is only about $1 trillion, whereas when you do the same comparison for emerging nations, the same thing comes to 1.5 trillion. That's $500 billion more in potential new value. We in India are in a great experiment where we are trying to increase the number of jobs that we are able to provide for our people. 12 million people are entering the labor market every year. And to give these people jobs, we need to increase something. We need to increase manufacturing, perhaps. And that is the effort which the government started through the Make in India and other efforts in 2014. We need to have double-digit growth if we need to see tangible benefits accruing to the bottom of the pyramid. Now, the problem with all this is that as you go to modern systems, when you're trying to make new companies with new technology, with foreign direct investment coming from outside, you find two problems. One, you don't get enough of the foreign direct investment that you want. Two, the factories and institutions that you set up need less workers because they are more highly automated. And the third problem is that the guys who get into the job market may not be qualified or competent enough to take on these jobs unless you provide a lot of training. And therefore, the skills are not adequate for the jobs that are available. So then there has to be some way out of this conundrum. In 4 years, we have not, frankly, managed to get the number of jobs we want or the amount of manufacturing and investment that we were hoping for. So where are we going to get the growth and where are we going to get the jobs? China went from the farm to the factory. So India must go from farm to services. We have a vast young rural workforce, so we can turbocharge growth with them. And 90% of India's labor force is in the informal economy. So the goal must be to promote micro, small, and medium enterprises and entrepreneurship. This will be the key to success. And if we need to do that, we must make sure that we have the adequate physical and soft infrastructure, and we need to make sure that that is in place. That is a very critical issue. We have to solve problems in all these areas, in water, in connectivity, healthcare, agriculture, education, energy, empowerment, governance. I'll take connectivity to begin with. Road and rail links are good, but we have a lot of work still to be done, especially in connecting some remote villages in remote parts of the country. And rail links also, much of our rail infrastructure is very old, and we need to revamp it, upgrade it. Electricity, we've just heard the figure of generation capacity, but there is still a problem of delivery and still a problem of leakage and theft and losses. 250,000 gram panchayats, this is the village clusters, are to be linked with fiber optics. About 150 or so have been done already, and the balance hopefully will be done in the next few years. But that still doesn't get the internet, Wi-Fi, TV, and radio to the villages, to all the villages. And for that, we have to get in wireless internet systems, which will be the bridging connection for the last step. And those connections will enable financial inclusion and what we call JAM, Jan Dhan Aadhaar Mobile. We have already created more than 300 million bank accounts for people who had no money. And these people with these bank accounts connected to the mobile and the Aadhaar, which is the unique identity system, are now able to access government subsidies, government payments for rural employment programs provided by the government. And the Aadhaar which was mentioned earlier by some of the earlier speakers, is truly unique biometric system, unique in the world, the largest one in the world, which does it by iris and fingerprint scan. So you have a way in which you are able to identify every one of our citizens. And already 1.22 billion people have got Aadhaar cards, 1.21 billion have got mobile phones. And so if we are trying to link these with the bank accounts, and 450 million of those mobile phones are smartphones. So we are also making sure that these people will not only be able to do the basic stuff with the phone, but can move further and get information, internet, and access through the mobile phone. Education is a critical aspect, and this is basic to empowerment. We can't empower our people without education. So when I refer to education, I don't merely mean schools where children go and learn. This is something which we are having to do in a more comprehensive fashion, taking everyone around us, all the people of the village. So it's information and awareness that we are talking of. Internet, Wi-Fi, TV, and community radio for providing all the information to the people, online courses for all ages and genders, imparting skills for entrepreneurship, which I mentioned earlier, and which is critical. This would also have to be done through the education system, improving school attendance, infrastructure and toilets, computers, tablets, and mobiles. Water and sanitation. 54% of India faces high to extremely high stress. Water stress. And we have these 5 R's, which I always love talking about. We need to retain the water that we are getting. We need to restore, in other words, purify, treat the water we have to drink and use. We have to reduce the consumption through methods like drip irrigation, because 80% of India's water is used for agriculture. Also reduce leakages and theft. We have to reuse water, not throw the sewage back into the rivers and seas. And therefore, we need, by reusing it, we will also be able to recycle the nitrogen, the phosphorus, the potassium, and the other minerals, which could come back to us as fertilizer. And finally, if after all the four we still don't have enough water, we need to recycle, so we'll have to go in for desalination. And with a coastline of 7,500 kilometers and the vast solar capacity, that is a huge potential we are not tapping. Healthcare and nutrition. We need to empower the accredited social health activists in the villages who are now just performing as midwives to do much more than that with telemedicine portals. We need cloud-based big data analytics for medical records. We need to have preventive healthcare and IoT and healthcare. We need to have refrigeration so that medicines and vaccines, including anti-snake venom, 46,000 people die every year of snake bite in India. And medicine delivery has to be proper. We need to ensure better nutrition because there's no point in providing healthcare. We do not provide adequate nutrition and better quality of food for the children and lactating mothers and expectant mothers and others. And therefore, spirulina algae is one system. I'm not saying the only thing, but it's one system where 60% protein and a high degree of all the minerals and nutrients necessary are provided. And it's a very cheap and yet very profitable way of delivering it. Agriculture, we are gone down the wrong path of, well, I wouldn't say wrong path, but the path of adopting hydrocarbon-based fertilizer, agriculture, and hybrids, and so on. We need to go back to think of how to get more organic agriculture, organic fertilizers and pesticides, going for things like no-till farming, which interestingly is becoming popular in America now. We need to talk of using ideas like biochar, terra preta, which was used by Mesoamericans to improve our soil quality. We are already the fastest growing market in the world for drip irrigation, and we need to do more of that. So you see the benefits of it. Precision farming and IoT with AI, ML thrown in. We need remote sensing for yields, geospatial technologies, a sensor for moisture and temperature. These are all required. So, and we need water monitoring through these systems. Energy. We have the sun. We have the most sun that anyone can have, more than 300 days of sun. And yet, we don't do enough in terms of, we are now only starting with the boost of the Prime Minister of going in for solar PV, but we also need to go in for concentrated solar PV, which produces 5 times as much as solar PV, and which can also produce the heat which you use for cooling and refrigeration. We also are one of the world leaders in wind power, and we have to have biomass. So it's 100,000 megawatts we are trying to target for solar, 75,000 for others, including 50,000, 60,000 for wind, and 15,000 for biomass. Methanol, there's been a lot of talk about trying to get more methanol into the system, not only for replacing and blending with gasoline and diesel, but also for cook stoves. And as I mentioned earlier, with so much heat, we have an option, a huge chance. We lack cold storages. We need to go in for heat absorption-based cold storage, so we save electricity. And we need to look at, you know that the Hoover Dam is going to consider the possibility of being used as a pump storage plant. We need to think of those kinds of ideas in India to be able to harness our power better. Entrepreneurship. This is the key to solving our problem of jobs, of empowerment. We need to get more micro, small, and medium enterprises through the cooperative model. Amul is the brilliant example of it. We have become world leaders in milk. 130,000 milk cooperatives are all around the country. From a country which was starved of milk in the 60s, we are today the world leaders. And we need to encourage women entrepreneurs. The people who Amul encouraged were women who were engaged in milking the cows and in providing the milk. We have to go in for horticulture in a big way, fruits, vegetables, and so on. We have to think in terms of fish and shrimp farming, which we are already doing in Andhra Pradesh, thanks to Solomon. New ideas. I mean, much of our honey comes from the forest. We need to go in for cultivated honey through hiving systems. Food processing is an area which we have ignored for a lot of time. There's a lot of talk by the government about new food processing, cold storage is coming up, but we need to see that this comes in place not just for the haves and the rich people in the cities, but also in rural areas for the farmer who is producing it, for the fisherman who is getting the need for it. And we need to also go further in the chain, talk of plants for juicing, jams, packaging, shipping, and so on. We need to talk of bamboo and engineered bamboo products that we can make from it. All of these could be very successful in the cooperative model. Handlooms, silk, we are the only country in the world which produces all 5 types of silk. And handicrafts, of course, I need not even mention. You all know about it, organic substitutes for plastic. BPO and IT, this is something the government has started in the last 2 or 3 years. And we now have a large number of BPO entrepreneurs who are actually providing services to villages and small towns, people who don't know how to get an air ticket or a rail ticket or a land record through, these are kiosks which help them to do so. And e-commerce and the national agricultural markets provided through e-commerce, this can change India. Governance, there's e-governance, as I mentioned earlier, we have the availability of a farmer, a rural participant can avail of his land records, passport, electoral roll, personal documents from the cloud. And we need to have more women leaders, administrators, not just at the village level, but even above. And in teaching, in IT, engineering, entrepreneurs, pilots, bus drivers, we need them in just about every area because we have only 29% of our women in employment, in formal employment. We need to increase that. If they are 50% of the population, they should also be 50% in employment. And adventure sports, hotels, tourism offer great scope. Transportation of people and goods. I talked of the Swiss post buses because in a lot of rural areas, you may not have adequate number of people, but you do have goods. So the Swiss post is the excellent example of how they combine both. And this is where we hope to reach with all this by delivering these through smart villages. Professor Solomon Darwin has his term for the smart villages, which is a community economically empowered by digital technologies and open innovation platforms to access global markets. And the idea is that you are trying to provide greater happiness and to provide scalable solutions which can work in villages so that people can realize the benefits of development.
Respected Chancellor of UC Berkeley, Carol Christ, distinguished faculty of UC Berkeley, and corporate executive of the US, India, and elsewhere. Arunachal Pradesh is proud to be a part of the US-India conference at Berkeley sponsored by AIMA. Your theme this year of transforming India is a part of our state's agenda here in Arunachal Pradesh. Our efforts to tap into growth opportunities in villages in India will be greatly enhanced by this conference, where many business expansion models will be discussed. I have personally met and made presentation to Prime Minister Modi ji to take this effort forward through several digital technologies proposed for smart villages by Professor Solomon Darwin and Ambassador Ashok. Our proposal was very well received by the Prime Minister, and we intend to take the smart village movement forward. And on 9th of this month, we are giving a presentation to the Niti Aayog as well. I am delighted that UC Berkeley and the state government of Arunachal Pradesh have just entered into a MOU to expand this effort. I believe that scalable and sustainable models being developed by Smart Village Movement team of UC Berkeley through the collaborative efforts of global corporations, village governments, startup, and a consortium universities will benefit and empower 3.4 billion people living in villages in India and the developing world. I wish UC Berkeley and AIMA a great success for the conference. Jai Hind and thank you.
In concluding, I would just like to thank Chancellor Christ and the UC Berkeley team for their initiative and support of the Smart Village program. Over the last 3 years, this program, which drew inspiration from the father of open innovation, Professor Henry Chesbrough, and was spearheaded by the father of smart villages, Professor Solomon Darwin, has moved from one village, Mori, in East Godavari district of Andhra Pradesh, to 472 villages in that state. This morning, we celebrated the exchange of the MOU between UC Berkeley and the state of Andhra Pradesh to advance scholarship through a cooperative relationship. Through this MOU, UC Berkeley will initiate work on smart village programs in Arunachal Pradesh. UC Berkeley and Professor Darwin are also in discussion with other states in India to take this on a pan-India level, with the experiences learned translatable to other parts of the world as well. On behalf of the state of Arunachal Pradesh and India, I thank UC Berkeley for their continued work and support to the economic and social development and empowerment to better the lives of communities across India. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Ashok. You have gave a great picture of on-ground realities and the needs and the opportunities for companies and startups to come to India and to fill some of those needs that you wonderfully painted. On-ground realities are very, very important. And thank you for your kind words there. We're running behind, so I gave up my presentation already. But we have one more great speaker before we have coffee and tea and some snacks at the back. Rajeev Gowda is a member of Parliament of Rajya Sabha. It's in England, in the UK, we have House of Commons and House of Lords. And we don't break, we'll just keep going? All right. And so he's the MP, Member of Parliament for the House of Lords. And he's also a professor. He gave me his business card here. He's a professor, so he's an academic, so a great combination. You're a politician, influences policy, but you're also a professor at the IIM Bangalore, I think. And he was also the ex-governor of the Federal Reserve Bank of India. Great. It's a pleasure to have him. Sir?
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be back on the Berkeley campus. About 28 years ago, I spent my postdoctoral fellowship here on this campus after my PhD at Wharton. But it's taken me that long to come back, actually. So certainly, the place has transformed quite a bit. I'm also very grateful to the All India Management Association for including me in the program. When I discovered that I was going to be in the Bay Area at the same time as this, I called my old, emailed my old sparring partner, Mohandas. We keep fighting on TV debates, and said, hey, why not participate in the program itself? And lo and behold, here I am as a keynote speaker. In any case, it's really an opportunity for the political class also to engage with the management community. You might say, those of us, I'm representing the All India Dysfunction Association and engaging with the Management Association. But in any case, if you think about many of the themes that have already been addressed today about India, the growth opportunities, etc., there are a lot of what I wanted to cover has already been covered, but let me add those points which I think are really vital for us to understand how India is evolving and where the opportunities lie in front of us going forward. When you think about India and opportunities, I think the best real example or a metaphor would be the mobile telephone. For decades, India had very, very low wired connectivity. It would take 2 years to get a telephone connection when Mohandas and I were much, much younger. But when the mobile telephone came in, it just transformed, and today we have nearly 1 billion individuals with not just mobile telephones, but a large number of them with smartphones, which become the platform for numerous other activities, numerous other opportunities to just change the way they engage with entertainment, communication, education, various other services. So that's the sort of possibility that exists. See, here you have this large economy, and Mohandas gave us a a lot of numbers about the potential, the raw potential of the economy, and so did Sunil Munjal. And of course, Ambassador Ashok also talked to us about the range of possibilities. But just, when you think about what the mobile telephone did to us, you can imagine what kind of unimaginable possibilities exist in front of us as we harness digital communication, as we harness newer kinds of artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and these kinds of technologies to do things with India that we have never really anticipated. Well, if I were to start thinking about the major trends that are in front of us, which are unfolding, let me just go through some of those that have been mentioned and add a particular twist. For example, on demography. For decades now, we've been talking about India as a very young nation, and there's no doubt about that at all. But along with that, we also have a very large and growing older population. So when you think about opportunities in terms of healthcare, in terms of geriatric care, the challenges that the system is going to face because of a changing society. So far, parents essentially relied on children to take care of them. But today, there's tremendous migration. People are moving within the country and abroad, and therefore, people are living longer. There are lots and lots of challenges before us in terms of the older demographic. Of course, there are millions of opportunities with the younger, but I just wanted to flag the opportunities that would go along with the older demographic as well. We talked about financial inclusion, Jan Dhan, Aadhaar, mobile. This is really something that is fundamentally transformative. It basically means that a large number of people who were left out of the formal financial system are now have access to bank accounts. This is something actually quite typical of modern India. It's a progression of policies, one government building on what the previous government had already done. And so, for the 10 years of the UPA, we focused on getting banks to any habitation of 2,000 people. And Prime Minister Modi has taken this to the extent of making sure that every individual has a bank account. So this is something that you can see where, and I think one of the other speakers also, Sunil Munjal, pointed out that since 1991, across party lines, regardless of which government has been in power, what ideology they profess, the fundamental thrust in terms of economic opening, in terms of sort of more liberalized policies, I think that has not changed. It's only getting, more and more fine-tuned as we go along. So that actually is one of the other things about India. For all our vibrant political conflict, we certainly are not insane enough to hurt ourselves on the economic front. We're very, very clear on ensuring that opportunities keep unfolding as we move forward. On the issue of urbanization, Mohandas gave you a number for the number of towns in India. Actually, if you look at the definition that we use, these definitions are very archaic. The definition of urban says if 50% of the population engages in an occupation that is not agriculture, or there's some population density level, etc. But actually, if you start looking at maps of density, you'll find today that India is probably 70–80% urban. And that means that there are all kinds of newer challenges facing an urbanizing India, which we are better off anticipating and resolving before we go forward. A couple of days ago, I was astounded to see the Supreme Court issue an order saying that construction activity in 4 or 5 major states will have to, is essentially stopped until they figure out their solid waste management program. Okay, so this is what's happening. Basically, we're urbanizing rapidly, chaotically, without really paying attention to issues of resources, of water, of sewage and transportation, and even urban design. It's all happening in some kind of a retail manner with farmers essentially converting their land into layouts, buildings coming up without enough infrastructure. So these are all challenges that, if anticipated, we can really turn these urbanizing centers into hubs of economic activity of the kind that we've never seen before. the smart village concept is something that I will ask Solomon about and try and figure out how, this was one of our former President Abdul Kalam's dreams, to ensure that you provide the best opportunities for rural India as well as what is available in urban India. Now, in terms of infrastructure, we talked about the hard infrastructure, but there's so much more. In Bangalore, the city that I'm from, just getting from one place to another can be a real challenge because of the growth in private transportation options. And so if we're going to see people continuing to buy vehicles, then how do we lower the larger impact on the environment? We've had horror stories about air pollution in Delhi, et cetera, in recent times. So maybe electric vehicles is one of the agendas for the future. And there again, we would need a lot of technological improvements taking us forward. But along with that, just better information in our hands about when the next bus is coming, the predictability that comes along with that could make a huge difference in terms of getting people to take public transport and to ensuring that that roadblocks are minimized in terms of speed and the ability of people to move from one place to another. It may sound crazy, but traffic signals, just putting a little clock there which tells you how many seconds before the signal changes has done a lot to reduce road rage and tension and things like that, just because people aren't, little innovations of that sort can make a huge difference. And certainly a little more predictability in terms of, about using public transport and tracking systems and things of that sort could make a huge difference going forward. Now, I'm part of the Congress Party's manifesto committee, and we've just started our work on trying to figure out what we need to offer the people of India. But this is something that you'll find that every party will also be looking at, the major challenges that the country is facing. Infrastructure is certainly one, but education is really something that is a major challenge. And for all that large number of schools and universities that we have had, over the years, we've somehow lost track of quality, and our ability to deliver high-quality education has really declined over the years. In terms of access to education, we've found a way, we've installed a right to education and brought children to schools, partly through a free midday meal every day. But what kind of education are we imparting? How do we ensure that the kind of education that gave me the foundation to go to the Ivy League and come and do a postdoc at Berkeley, how do we make sure that this is available to everybody? The kind of gaps, the inequality within the country are just tremendous. And here, technology could play an amazing role in terms of leveling the playing field. And there are lots of startups working in that particular direction. And ultimately, if you want to think about higher education, there again, the possibilities are endless, because if you think about the cost of education in India, it's a fraction of what it costs to go to college in America. And the word for a university in India is Vishwavidyalaya, which means sort of education hub for the world. And somehow, in India, we've not really dreamt that big. We haven't thought about how we can provide the best education in English at probably the lowest cost in the world. And that it should be the kind of aspiration, not just for Indians everywhere within the country, but really opening our doors like the way the United States has done over the centuries. So that, using technology, transforming quality, bringing about the kind of innovation and research mindset that has somewhat declined over the years, these are the transformations that will make a huge difference. On healthcare, again, harnessing technology, working with rural providers, and ensuring that that entire system, the primary healthcare engagement, is technologically enabled, could make a huge difference. But here in India, today we are staring at a real challenge. So far, we've been dealing with communicable diseases. And now, looking forward, we are seeing, not looking forward at all, frankly, but looking forward with horror and trepidation at an epidemic of non-communicable diseases, diabetes, blood pressure, heart disease. These are, going to be huge problems in India. And along with finding ways to ensure better nutrition, we need to change lifestyles, we need to change monitoring. There's a lot of other work that needs to go in before to try and reverse the trends that are emerging in India. One other major challenge is in agriculture. We've had, every parliament session we have one day allotted to a debate on the agrarian crisis. And it's not clear that we've come out with any solutions to deal with this particular problem. But technology, other kinds of innovations could play a major role. The farmer is facing issues related to credit, related to risk management, related to better value addition and market prices. And India today is staring at a situation where in many commodities we are actually surplus producers. We're a surplus producer. It's hardly the scarcity economy that we used to live with. And so how are we going to deal with all this? How are we going to ensure that water is harnessed in a much more in a manner that conserves it much more carefully? All these are challenges going forward. And I think technology could play a major role. For example, in the risk management sector, I once came across a newspaper story where a 70-year-old farmer in a rural village in my state of Karnataka, in some conversation reported in the newspaper, he said, "Why are insurance companies not coming to me? I will take a photo of my crop, report it to them every week, and they can see if there's a failure and make sure that, and geotag everything. So in that case, there is no possibility of fraud and things of that sort." And he says, if this possibility exists, why don't you provide me the kind of insurance that we need going forward? And talking about insurance, the other major challenge within the country is social security. And we have populations that are not just aging, but even in the healthcare domain, if you look at the share of private expenditure, it's a huge share in India. And many, while over the years, we have prided ourselves on the way we've taken, just over the 10 years during the Congress-led UPA years, we brought 140 million people out of poverty. But it just takes one negative health incident, some person in the family getting cancer or having a big operation, and suddenly you'll find that that family goes back into poverty because of the costs that they have to bear out of their own pocket. So these are all challenges. And we don't have deep and well-developed pension systems, insurance systems, healthcare, health insurance systems, etc. And these are, again, domains where ideas and practices that have worked well. I'm not suggesting that the US has the best ideas on the healthcare front, but the basic point is that there are ideas that we need, and there are opportunities out there as well. Well, I haven't kept track of the time. I suppose I'm pretty much out of it. But let me just say one or two things. There's also a growing, sort of aspirational economy. The growing middle class also wants to wants to enjoy themselves. And the opportunities that are opening up in sports and entertainment, etc., are also really huge. We have, over the last decade, we have had the development of something called the Indian Premier League in cricket, which has been followed by similar leagues in games like Kabaddi. This is a native game, which actually has a big following on television and has turned a lot of Kabaddi players into millionaires and things like that. So these sorts of changes, people willing to go out there and enjoy themselves in different ways, these are also tremendous in the kind of opportunities that they offer people going forward. There are other opportunities in terms of increasing stress and the number of people who are coming out there to calm you down and things like that. But I think we have enough homegrown entrepreneurs in that space. But let me just end by saying that I lived in the US for about 16 and a half years, from 84 to 2000. And when I went back to Bangalore in 2000, I found a city, used to be a fairly sleepy, sort of education hub in my public sector organization-driven city. But when I went back, it was a hub of entrepreneurship, and it was a hub of social entrepreneurship. two things that really brought a tremendous joy to my heart, and also gave me that sense of possibility that allowed me to to engage with so many people working not only in transforming their brains into dollars, but also in terms of harnessing their ideas in the field of governance. And there have been, Aadhar is an example, one of Mohandas Pai's colleagues. Nandani Lakkani came out of the private sector, worked with government to try to help make this whole development happen. So that's actually the kind of energy that's out there in India in terms of the possibilities that exist, and in terms of the energy that can be tapped. We've got a huge, bedrock of relations at the people-to-people level between Indians and Americans, and I think that's a wonderful foundation to build on. There are going to be, at the policy level, interesting challenges, but you can leave that to the rest of us to sort out. In terms of the opportunities that exist before you all, I think these are just a few. I'm very grateful to have been here. I just want to make one small correction. I used to be a director part-time of the Reserve Bank of India, not the governor. Please don't mistake me for the charismatic Raghuram Rajan, my friend. Anyway, but thank you very much for the opportunity, and it's been great to be here.
Thank you, Rajeev. We are running way behind schedule, so I know people are waiting for coffee, but John Chambers is next, and I'm scrapping my presentation because we don't have time. But however, before John Chambers comes up and Sunil Munjal introduces him, we would like to honor two people, Ambassador Ashok and Rajeev. Gowda, would you come up to the stage? And Mohandas Pai has a moment just to present to you.
I thought you were not letting go.